An artist in whom they lost faith at one time. Paintings that proved the high level of the master, a painting technique that excited society and was ahead of its time. Oil paints, canvas size 165 to 115 centimeters, dark colors.
Muted green color, purple hues.
The water surface illuminated by an incredible source of light. The picture is called Night on the Dawn.
The effect is striking. It is as if there is a spotlight in the abyssal water, which illuminates this landscape from the bottom to the top, and not vice versa.
It was painted by the Greek from Mariupol, the world-famous artist Arkhyp Kuindzhi. The life and work of an outstanding and at the same time one of the most mysterious Ukrainian artists are shrouded in mysteries and secrets, and they start from the very birth of the painter.
Many people know that Kuindzhi is Greek by nationality. He was born in the Greek community of the city of Mariupol in the family of a poor shoemaker. At the moment, we know 4 dates of his birth. Moreover, all of them were written by him personally. Today, 3 passports of Kuindzhi have been preserved, those where his handwriting is certified. In the first one, he wrote 1841, in the second one, 1842, and in the third one, 1843. And in the last document, he also wrote with his own hand, 1841.
Orphaned at the age of 6, Arkhyp said goodbye to a carefree childhood. For 4 years, the boy was attending the parish school of the Greek community. He studied poorly, but drew all the time. At the age of 10, he applied for a job as an examiner of bricks for the farmer Habanenko, who was a foreman on the construction of a church. He lived in the kitchen of his patron. But even in these difficult circumstances, he didn't give up painting. He drew on everything that came to hand, on scraps of paper, fences, on sand, and the books in store. He painted with charcoal on the walls of the premises where he worked. Habanenko, the employer of Kuindzhi, noticed his skill, but he didn't forbid drawing. He even encouraged it. Later, young Kuindzhi got a job working for grain merchant Amoretti.
And we must pay tribute to the employers who in fact helped him. They were the ones who saw these drawings. Thanks to them, at the age of 15, Kuindzhi went to Feodosia to study under the supervision of the famous Ivan Aivazovsky.
Arkhyp got to Feodosia on foot. He had no money for transport. However, the recommendations of Habanenko and Amoretti did not help. Aivazovsky did not see an artist in the strong, burly, shy young man that Arkhyp was. The guy was only tasked with grinding paints and painting the fence in the yard.
So he did not receive his first lessons in painting from Aivazovsky, but from his relative instead, a painter who came to the master to literally copy his canvases. That was the end of the training. 2 months later, Kuindzhi returned to Mariupol and worked as a retoucher for a local photographer.
National Museum Kyiv Art Gallery. The exhibits here are not just priceless works of art. These are a kind of cards that can be used to read the fates of outstanding masters of the past. And calmness and serenity in a picture does not always mean that its author feels the same, and vice versa. Arkhyp Kuindzhi was no exception to this. He, already a famous artist, a native of Mariupol, was called in his hometown a self-made man who wrote his own destiny, because he did not stop to improve his talent when all the circumstances were against him. He did not give up when he faced rejections. From there exactly, the path of the artist of light began.
In 1865, Kuindzhi came to St. Petersburg with the hope of entering the Academy of Art, but he failed at it. Moreover, he didn't enter the following year either, but his morale was second to none. Obviously, he continued to study, and he studied hard, because as early as in 1868, he painted the wonderful canvas Tata Sokla in the Crimea.
And in the same year, he presented the painting at the academic exhibition, thanks to which he received the title of free, non-class artist from the academy. Later, he would even be allowed to take the exams to obtain a diploma. And in a few years, well-known Impressionist artists would admire his paintings at exhibitions. 2 years of studies at the Academy of Arts were not in vain. Here Kuindzhi acquired knowledge that he could not have obtained anywhere else. He mastered the realistic method of painting, and he also got acquainted with the artists called the Wanderers, who had an influence on the art of that time. Under the influence of the Wanderers, the artist created the painting Autumn Impossibility of Roads. For this work, he received a title of class artist and, at the same time, recognition. The paintings created by him at that time were on display and had great success at the exhibitions of the Society of Traveling Art Exhibitions, society of the artists called the Wanderers. Kuindzhi's name and his works were on everyone's lips. After finally believing in himself, the painter stopped attending classes at the academy.
He was elaborating his unique style, the style of Kuindzhi. He began to use colors that were simply not allowed in professional academic painting. He used bright crimson, bright red, bright green shades. He also used colors that enhanced each other, and this standed very much in contrast with the paintings of the Wanderers, who generally worked on subtle tonal nuances and created scales based on subtle tonalities. Pastel, pastels, undemanding, dim, because such was the method of a realist.
The painting Ukrainian Night brought Arkhyp Ivanovich to the height of his fame. For the work, he received a bronze medal at the exhibition. The painter from Mariupol was mentioned almost as often as the Tsar. Painted in 1876, Ukrainian Night marked the beginning of the Romantic period in Kuindzhi's work, and at the same time it outlined his break with the Wanderers.
Kuindzhi was accused of the uniformity of techniques, motives, and the use of special effects in the presentation of paintings. He was very offended by the critic who wrote about it in the newspaper. And sometime later, it turned out that this critic was Mikhailo Klod, his friend from the Society of Traveling Art Exhibitions. After Kuindzhi cut ties with the society, he presented to the world one of his most remarkable canvases. In 1880, he painted Moonlit Night on the Dnipro.
Everyone who saw this picture could not understand how the author was able to achieve such a wonderful and original result. Kuindzhi had his own secrets. He worked with paints of his own production. He added ingredients to the ready-made palette at his discretion, depending on what exactly he was painting. Hence, during the working on Moonlit Night on the Dnipro, Kuindzhi added some asphalt, thanks to which he achieved unreal shades. The artist partly owed the recipes of successful craft paints to his friendship with the scientist Dmytro Mendeleev. In addition to innovative artist techniques, the author also used an innovative method of demonstrating his work of art.
To exhibit this work, he draped the room, darkened it, and illuminated the canvas with an additional source of electric lighting. Such a display of the work was similar to the explosion of an atomic bomb in St. Petersburg at that time.
The painting was shown at the Imperial Society for the Encouragement of the Arts. It was an exhibition of one painting only.
It is known that the exhibition gathered a huge number of people. There were crowds at the entrance to the building. When people got inside, there was a crowd of spectators who were divided into two groups. One of these groups was near the picture, and the other was already waiting at the entrance to the hall.
The colors were so bright and original that some visitors were looking behind the painting, hoping to see a light bulb there. And in 1882, Arkhyp Kuindzhi presented two more works to the public, Dnipro in the morning and the remarkable painting Night on the Dawn.
Strangely enough, the public did not like this work, just like Dnipro in the morning. There were a lot of critical articles about these works. They wrote again that he repeated his effects, that he was no longer able to find something innovative. Kuindzhi was extremely offended.
1882, Arkhyp Kuindzhi, the famous artist born in Mariupol, Ukraine, at the then ace of fame, gave up exhibition activities. Instead, he bought a plot of land in Crimea and a house that looked like a hut. But during the period of spiritual and physical seclusion, the Ukrainian Greek Kuindzhi not only rested and reflected on life, he was also working actively. At that time, he painted a tremendous number of works. Among them is the finished work Evening. An evening landscape that can only be experienced in Ukraine, and that can be portrayed only by an artist who loved Ukraine. This work demonstrated that Kuindzhi perfectly mastered the hallmark of the Impressionists, the light air environment. In general, the tasks solved by the Ukrainian Greek were ahead of their time, and they marked the arrival of new forms in art that would appear only at the beginning of the 20th century.
In this picture, the artist managed to convey an amazing color range in its entirety, the spectacular complexity of the landscape, the mood of people when contemplating their twilight, perhaps a state of sadness, heart so reminiscing. His artistic method is truly unique, and if we analyze it in detail, we will see a lot of structural elements that seem incompatible at first glance. If other artists, Kuindzhi's contemporaries, tried to combine in their work the techniques Kuindzhi made use of, the result wouldn't probably match his, and this is where Kuindzhi's uniqueness lies. He managed to combine different elements in a very organic and synthetic way and create his distinctive method.
On July 24, 1910, the famous artist of light from Mariupol, Arkhyp Kuindzhi, died. He left behind not only about 170 works of art, but also the memory of himself as a man not obsessed with wealth and success, a man faithful to his craft. Shortly before his death, the artist made a will.
The amount specified in the will was considerable, 572,000 rubles. These were huge funds at that time. The will was made for his wife Vera, but the funds were transferred to support the Kuindzhi Society of Artists, and the wife received only an insignificant part of the sum.
The paintings of the Ukrainian artist decorate museums and private collections around the world. In particular, the work Red Sunset, having been in the hands of various private collectors, ended up in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and since 1974 it is part of its collection. It means that Arkhyp Ivanovich is appreciated in America as well. The artist from Mariupol, Arkhyp Kuindzhi, is rightfully called the founder of night landscape painting of the time. He was one of the few who was able to see different paints and colors at an equally dark time of day. But on canvas, he managed to convey what he saw even better. Seeing beauty is not enough, one needs to skillfully express it. And neither the Caucasus, nor the Russian village, nor Varlam with Lagada made him the Kuindzhi that the public idolized. The unique canvases on the Ukrainian theme were the ones that made him so. Meanwhile, during the long occupation of Ukraine, first by the Russian Empire and then by Soviet Russia, a false practice of calling prominent people from Ukraine Russians was developed. The same thing happened with the native of Mariupol, Arkhyp Kuindzhi, a Greek by nationality, who for some reason is considered a representative of Russian art. Yes, the painter learned the art in St. Petersburg and belonged to the so-called Russian school. However, the artist dedicated most of his works to Ukraine, and he was also inspired by Ukraine, Odessa, Crimea, Mariupol. It is in Mariupol, in the native city of the artist, that his memory would be tarnished many decades later. On March 21st, 2022, a month later, after the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the building of the Arkhyp Kuindzhi Art Museum was destroyed by a direct hit of a Russian aero bomb. In addition, the monument to the artist was dismantled. Fortunately, Kuindzhi's original works were not in the museum at the time of the attack. At the same time, original works of other Ukrainian artists, Tatiana Yablonska, Ivan Aivazovsky and others, were stored there. The fate of these works is currently unknown.